From crowns to communism, the wild rise of Soviet Russia. What if I told you that one of the most powerful empires in history collapsed not with a bang, but with a blizzard of bad decisions, botched wars, and a priest-led protest that turned into a massacre? How did Russia go from imperial grandeur to gulags in just 2 decades? Why did Japan humiliate the Russian Navy like it was a schoolyard brawl? So grab your ushanka, sharpen your pitchfork, and prepare for a journey through betrayal, battles, and Bolshevik bravado. Because once you start this story, you won't want to stop until the last comrade falls. Russia in the late 19th century was like a teenager going through an awkward growth spurt. Industrialization was booming, but agriculture was still stuck in medieval mud. Enter Karl Marx, whose communist ideas spread like wildfire among the working class. Marx basically said, factories should be owned by everyone, not just rich dudes in fur hats. And the Russian proletariat replied, sounds good, comrade. Nicholas II, however, was an absolute monarch, meaning he had the final say on everything, from foreign policy to the color of imperial curtains. Spoiler, he wasn't great at it. In 1904, Russia picked a fight with Japan over Korea and Manchuria. Japan, not one to back down, launched a surprise attack on Port Arthur, a Russian naval base leased from China. Russia expected an easy win. Instead, they got a masterclass in modern warfare. Battles like Mukden and Tsushima were catastrophic for Russia. The Japanese even sank most of the Russian fleet like it was a bathtub toy. Peace talks led by Sergei Witte ended with Russia losing Port Arthur and half of Sakhalin Island. The empire was humiliated, and Nicholas II's approval rating plummeted faster than a lead balloon. January 22nd, 1905, Julian calendar. Father Gapon, a priest with a flair for drama, led thousands of peaceful protesters to the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. They carried a petition asking for better working conditions and political reforms. Nicholas II wasn't home, but his troops were, and they opened fire. Hundreds died. The event became known as Bloody Sunday, and it shattered the myth of the benevolent Tsar. Riots erupted across the empire. Workers went on strike, peasants revolted, and revolutionaries sharpened their pitchforks. Nicholas, panicking, offered a compromise, the October Manifesto, which created the Duma, an elected assembly. But it was about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Nicholas still held all the power. The revolution of 1905 didn't topple the monarchy, but it exposed its cracks. Nicholas appointed Pyotr Stolypin as prime minister, who tried to fix agriculture and calm the masses. He was assassinated in 1911 while watching a play, no less. Talk about dramatic exits. Then came World War I. Russia struggled, morale tanked, and Nicholas, ignoring every sane advisor, made himself head of the army. He left Empress Alexandra in charge, who relied heavily on Grigory Rasputin, a mystic with a beard that could house small birds. Rasputin's influence was scandalous, and he was assassinated in 1916. By 1917, Russia was starving, exhausted, and done with Nicholas. The army mutinied, and generals told him to abdicate. He did. Enter Lenin, Trotsky, and the Bolsheviks, who promised land, peace, and bread. The provisional government tried to hold on, but the Bolsheviks had other plans and a Red Guard. And thus, the stage was set for the October Revolution in November, where the Bolsheviks took over, and Nicholas II's reign became a cautionary tale of what happens when you ignore your people, lose wars, and trust mystics. General Lavr Kornilov, a man who thought Petrograd was ripe for a good old-fashioned military parade, decided to march his troops to restore order. Unfortunately, the Bolsheviks had other plans. They sabotaged his advance like mischievous gremlins, derailing trains, spreading propaganda, and generally making his life miserable. Kornilov never reached Petrograd. Instead, he got a one-way ticket to Arestville. Meanwhile, Lenin, fresh from exile and brimming with revolutionary zeal, declared, enough of this provisional nonsense. He called for a violent overthrow, handed the reins to Trotsky, and the Bolsheviks began their hostile takeover like a group of caffeinated hackers storming a server farm. They seized city infrastructure, chased Kerensky out of town, and took the Winter Palace, Russia's imperial HQ, with all the subtlety of a rock concert in a library. Lenin then strutted into the Petrograd Soviet and declared, "We're in charge now," while Trotsky dismissed the opposition like a bouncer at a communist nightclub. Lenin wasted no time. He rolled out 3 decrees like Oprah giving away cars. Decree on peace, no more war. Cue awkward silence from Germany. Decree on land, peasants, grab your pitchforks and start dividing estates. Decree on workers, minimum wage for all. Also, free health care and education. He even gave women more rights and said, Finland, you do you, accepting their independence. Then came the promise of free and fair elections. The Bolsheviks lost. Lenin, clearly unfamiliar with losing, said, democracy? Never heard of her, and shut down the assembly with the Red Guard. Moscow was declared the new capital, and Russia finally joined the Gregorian calendar in March 1918, because nothing says revolution like syncing your dates. Trotsky, now moonlighting as a diplomat, negotiated the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Russia gave up a chunk of territory to Germany and Austria-Hungary. It was humiliating, but Lenin shrugged. Peace is peace. Enter the Czechoslovak Legion, a group of fighters who had backed Russia in WWI in exchange for independence from Austria-Hungary. They felt betrayed by the treaty and revolted. Their success inspired other anti-Bolshevik factions to rise up, and thus began the Russian Civil War. The Bolsheviks, Reds, faced off against a chaotic coalition of monarchists, liberals, nationalists, and foreign powers, whites. Britain, France, Japan, and the US joined in, not for love of the Tsar, but to reopen the Eastern Front and stop communism from spreading like glitter at a craft fair. The whites had early success, but were about as coordinated as a three-legged race on ice. Many fought for independence, not empire. Their generals were a mixed bag. Alexander Kolchak, for instance, couldn't keep his officers sober, insulted allies, and executed civilians like it was a hobby. He did capture Yekaterinburg, where Nicholas II was held. The Bolsheviks, fearing a royal rescue, executed the entire imperial family on July 17, 1918. The Reds had geography, industry, and population on their side. To maintain control, they unleashed the Red Terror, work camps, executions, and Trotsky's hostage strategy. Obey, or your family gets it. Eventually, the Allies realized the Bolsheviks weren't going anywhere and withdrew. The Czechoslovak Legion went home to their now independent nation. With the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires in ruins, Eastern Europe was a jigsaw puzzle, missing half its pieces. Józef Piłsudski of Poland wanted to expand into Ukraine. The Bolsheviks, dreaming of communist dominoes across Europe, counterattacked and reached Warsaw. But Poland repelled them, securing its independence and putting a pin in Bolshevik expansion. For now. After the Russian Civil War, the Bolsheviks were feeling spicy. They wanted to spread communism across Europe like jam on toast. But when they tried to push into Germany, they were stopped cold by the Polish army and a general lack of enthusiasm from the rest of Europe. So instead of exporting revolution, they settled for creating socialist republics in Ukraine and Belarus. These were less independent nations and more Russian sock puppets with flags. Enjoying the story? Don't miss a beat. Hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and follow us for more jaw-dropping history, epic revolutions, and wild political twists. New episodes drop regularly. Be the first to watch, learn, and laugh. Russia's economy was in shambles, like a bear trying to do ballet on a frozen lake. So Lenin, in a move that made Marx spin in his grave, introduced the new economic policy, NEP, in 1921. It allowed some private enterprise. Yes, the communists were now saying, you can own a bakery, but don't get cocky. This policy helped revive the economy, and in 1922, Lenin and his puppet republics formed the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. It was like a communist Avengers team, but with more bureaucracy and fewer capes. By the early 1920s, Lenin's health was failing. After a series of strokes, he was left bedridden, unable to speak, and probably wondering why he hadn't just retired to a dacha in Crimea. He died in 1924, leaving behind a power vacuum so intense it could suck the mustache off Stalin's face. Two contenders emerged. Leon Trotsky, revolutionary rock star, military genius, and owner of the sharpest cheekbones in the USSR. Joseph Stalin, quiet, calculating, and already general secretary, a position he used like a backstage pass to control everything. Trotsky believed in permanent revolution. We must spread socialism globally, or we're toast. He feared that a lone socialist state would be crushed by capitalist neighbors. Stalin countered with socialism in one country. Let's fix our own house before we redecorate Europe. It was pragmatic, nationalistic, and let's be honest, easier to sell to a war-weary population. Stalin outmaneuvered Trotsky like a chess master playing against a guy with a blindfold. He forged alliances, buried Lenin's criticisms of him, and by 1929 Trotsky was exiled. He fled to Mexico, where in 1940 he was assassinated with an ice axe, because apparently bullets were too mainstream. With Trotsky gone, Stalin turned the USSR into his personal playground. He unleashed the NKVD, a secret police force that made everyone paranoid, even their shadows. He purged the Communist Party, executed Red Army officers, and sent dissidents to the gulags. Work camps with conditions so brutal they made Dante's Inferno look like a spa retreat. But Stalin wasn't just a tyrant, he was a builder. He launched the 5-year plans, which turbocharged industrial output. Russia went from plow and prayer to steel and skyscrapers in record time. Then came collectivization. Farmers were forced to merge their lands into giant state-run farms. It was supposed to increase crop yields. Instead, it caused famine, especially in Ukraine, where millions died. But mechanization did improve, and the USSR became a formidable industrial power. So what did the Russian Revolution achieve? It replaced one authoritarian regime, the Tsar, with another, Stalin. It turned Russia into a superpower, one that would later help defeat the Nazis. It marked the last time Russia and the West were on the same team before the Cold War turned that bromance into a frosty stare-down. Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin, they were revolutionaries, ideologues, and ruthless tacticians. Their actions reshaped the 20th century, for better or worse. And while the dream of a worker's paradise may have been buried under bureaucracy and barbed wire, the echoes of their revolution still rumble through history. If you loved this deep dive into Russia's wild revolutionary ride, don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so you never miss another epic story from the past. We've got more revolutions, betrayals, and jaw-dropping history coming your way. You won't want to miss it.